Okay, so if I were to ask you to name the most successful company, startup company in the last 50 years and the most successful entrepreneur over the same period of time, I'm pretty sure that a lot of you would say Apple and Steve Jobs, and you would be correct. Definitely Apple is one of the most successful startups in our lifetime, and Steve Jobs was one of the most successful entrepreneurs in our lifetime. But where did this success come from? This success came from failure. So this is a great example of what I've been talking about so far, the relationship between success and failure. It's not just theoretical. It doesn't just apply to hypothetical situations where people might be afraid to fail. This is a great example, meaning Apple and Steve Jobs are a great example of the relationship between failure and success. So if we look at Apple's performance on product, so Apple had very early success with their first product or very early products in the late 1970s. But after that, pretty much every product that Apple launched was a failure. 1980, Apple III failed. 1983, Lisa failed. Jobs failed in 1986 after leaving Apple with Pixar Computer, with Next Workstation. Apple continued to fail through 1993 with their Newton. And this is a not complete list of failed Apple products. Apple failed to create value for shareholders for many, many years. So this is a look at Apple's stock price from 1988 until 1998, which is 10 years of the company's history. And you can see this was almost unmitigated story of shareholder destruction. So in around 1991, from $18 a share down to less than $4 a share by 1998. So product failure, market failure, financial market failure. Competitive failure. So in 1980, a few years after their IPO, Apple had a 15% share of the PC market, and more than 30 years later, they had an 8% share of the PC market. So we saw Apple failing with their products, failing to create shareholder value, failing to beat Microsoft on the product side. And looking at Steve Jobs, so we looked at Apple fails. Here's Steve Jobs' fail. He had an early success with Apple II in 1977. And between 1977 and 1995, which is a period of almost 18 years, he had one career failure after another. He failed at almost everything that he did in between the first success and the next success for 18 years. So I have marked the failure points in his career here in red. The one bright spot, Macintosh, which was a successful product for Apple in 1984, but was in some way a personal failure for Jobs because he was ousted from Apple shortly after Macintosh. So when we look at Jobs' career, we see fail, 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 and fail for 18 years, which is probably, close to as long as many of my undergraduate students have been alive. However, let's look now at what were the consequences of those failures, meaning what followed that 18 years of failure. So what followed that 18 years of failure was success on an incredible level, with first Pixar animated films, then iPod, iPhone, and iPad. So after wandering in the wilderness of incredible failure for many years, Jobs was able to become from that experience one of the most successful entrepreneurs in history. And I don't think that this is coincidence. I think that this is a great example of the contribution that failure plays in success. Now, I think it's important to note, how was Jobs failing? He was failing because he was always trying to do the next big thing, something bigger than what he had last done. His reach exceeding his grasp. And of course, when you dedicate your life to doing that, you're going to fail a lot. But when that succeeded, he was able to transform at least 4 industries: animated film, portable music, portable phone, and tablet. So I think that same attitude and that same approach led from repeated failure on a very large scale to massive success. And this is what that looked like in stock price. So you can see the Apple stock price story since the turnaround is the pretty much exact inverse of what it was like on the failure side.